On this episode of the Hockey Talk Show, it's a trade rumor roundup. Welcome to another episode of the Hockey Talk Show. Just a quick note here. I want everybody to know that we are going to be doing live shows very, very soon where you can actually call in and interact with the program, ask questions, make points, call me an idiot, whatever it is you got to do. You're going to be more than welcome to. We're going to be streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. So make sure you guys follow along. We're at Hockey Talk Show on both. And you can always visit our website, hockeytalkshow.com, to get the links. But again, we're going to be on Facebook and YouTube streaming live very, very soon. So make sure you are following us on Facebook and you are hitting that notification button over on YouTube so that a second we go live, you're notified so you can tune in and check out the show. Let's get into some of the trade rumors here. I think the National Hockey League is one of the best leagues for trades. And let's be honest, trades are exciting. We like trades. Sports is one of those rare entities where a trade can even exist. Nowhere else in the world do you see one law firm trade 3 lawyers for a legal aid and 2 other lawyers and a lawyer to be named. It doesn't happen. We're going to trade 2 lawyers and we're going to get a good lawyer back in return and a draft pick for next year's lawyer draft. It's going to be fantastic. What'd you get in return for Miller? Oh, look, we got 2 kids in law school. Not bad. I think we're going to be all right. It doesn't happen anywhere else in the world except for the world of sports. And out of all the 4 major sports, hockey's kind of the best. Trades in the National Football League rarely ever happen. You rarely see a trade in the NFL. Baseball trades tend to really come in the off season. I find there's not a whole ton of movement really during the season. A little bit during the deadline, teams will shore themselves up, but not as much as you see in the NHL. And the NBA has some trades. NBA tends to have like blockbuster deals. I will give the NBA credit for this too. They also are much better at 3-way deals. You have a lot of 3 teams involved in one trade where you don't really see that much in any other sport. You used to see it in hockey, but not so much anymore. And the trades have declined in hockey because of the salary cap, but still there's a vibrant trade market there. And there's always a lot of rumors. And I think the rumors that we're going to look at in this episode here are really highly fueled by teams that are underachieving, and also the introduction of the Vegas Golden Knights. They have really, the entry draft, or the expansion draft, I should say, is really sort of fueled a lot here. And the Golden Knights going into the season with 10 defensemen is really starting to set up a lot of things. But the first one that we're going to lead with, we're going to start with the underachieving aspect of why the trade rumors are running so rampant here, just 5, 6, 7 games into this early 2017-28 campaign. And we're going to start with the Montreal Canadiens. We've been talking a lot about them. I've been coming down on them. They're off to a rocky start, 1-4-1 right now, 6 games into the year. Only team worse than them in the East is the other team I've been coming down on a lot, and that's the New York Rangers. But Darren Dreger was on the TSN radio in Montreal, TSN 690, and he was doing an interview there, and he says that Marc Bergevin, general manager of the Montreal Canadiens, has been seen at several New York Islander games. Dreger has checked into this. He hasn't been able to identify who Marc Bergevin is looking at. But regardless, it's an interesting fact that Marc Bergevin has been seen at several Islander games. Couple things on this. Teams scout other teams all the time, constantly. For those of you who don't know, I'm a former NHL employee. I used to work for the New York Islanders. I worked in the media department. So a lot of the times we knew who was coming. There would be a sheet of paper, and we would know, okay, this scout's here from this team, this scout's here from this team. A lot of the times it was just, advanced scouting. Maybe the Islanders were going to play that team. So, their scouts were in, checking out the tendencies, so on and so forth. But some of the times it was because of, they were scouting for trade purposes. So scouts are sent around a lot for trade purposes. When general managers start to get involved, that brings a little bit more to the table. There's definitely something else going on there. When a GM shows up at a game that his team is not playing at, and several games, something is definitely going on. Now, I know what you're thinking, John Tavares, right? Well, Montreal certainly could use a top-line center like John Tavares. Hell, everybody in the National Hockey League could use John Tavares, and everybody's going to be clamoring for him. That's why the rumors about John Tavares are running rampant. I will address the John Tavares stuff. Again, like I said, I'm a former employee of the New York Islanders. This show is coming to you from Long Island. This is where our studios are. For those of you who don't know, I'm a radio personality. I do a morning show on Long Island. If you didn't know that, check out the Hockey Talk Show intro. It kind of explains that and some of the things we've done outside of this show that we've just started here. And by the way, thank you to everybody who's liked our page and subscribing to the podcast and subscribing on YouTube and Facebook. Super cool. A lot of Instagram love out there. We're going to try and do some more on Instagram. But getting back to this whole thing, I'm very involved, very super obsessed with the John Tavares contract situation. I will address that in a separate time. I have a lot to say about it. I think the contract really is wrapped up a lot in the arena situation. And I think even more so than the arena situation, his contract is really wrapped up in, well, what's Garth Snow going to do to improve this team? I love the Eberle addition, by the way, and I think that that is going to be good enough. But I think you might have to go a little bit over the top here and add somebody else as the season moves on. Early yet for the Islanders. They're not part of this. Let's take them out of this and look at it from a Montreal Canadiens standpoint. Why are they at the game? Forget Tavares. It's not Tavares. He's got to be there for some other reason. And I think he's honestly looking at the wrong team because Montreal needs a puck-moving defenseman. They're desperate for one. Vegas has a couple. Why is he scouting the New York Islanders? The only thing that I can think of is Calvin DeHaan. I think maybe he thinks he can scoop up Calvin DeHaan for some reason. Well, I know the reason. The reason is Calvin DeHaan was a restricted free agent, almost went to arbitration, wanted a long-term deal with the Islanders, did not get it, got a one-year deal, and from what I understand is pretty unhappy about it. Now, I can't find it, but I know I heard, and forgive me because I like to cite my sources, but I know I heard it somewhere where Calvin DeHaan was doing an interview just before the season, and he had no problem being pretty vocal about how unhappy he was that he was back on a one-year deal only. He had no problem. Now, he didn't come out and complain. He wasn't like, well, Garth Snow sucks, but he was like, yeah, hey, I wanted a longer-term deal. I couldn't get it. I have no other rights, so I signed for the 1 year, and then we'll see what happens from there. Totally talking like a player that was pissed that he didn't get the deal that he wanted. He obviously wants to stay here, and he only got a 1 year deal. Not the ideal situation. So could Calvin DeHaan be one of the defensemen that is available to the Montreal Canadiens? I think so. I think that might be the trade chip. I can't for the life of me understand why anything else would come to fruition. Maybe they're looking at Josh Bailey. I think for the longest time, the Islanders were thinking about moving him. He hasn't lived up to his contract status, and that would sort of make sense because the Canadiens are sitting with something like $6 million in cap space. So they can afford to overpay Josh Bailey for this season because he's also going to be an unrestricted free agent towards the end of the year, I believe. I'll double check that on capfriendly.com while we're chatting here. But I'm pretty sure that Josh Bailey is a free agent at the end of this season, and he's making a little bit more than what he's worth, but he's still a good player. He is a free agent. He's still a good player at $3.3 million. It's not a ton of money that you can't exactly afford, but it is somewhat significant there as you take a look at capfriendly.com and the Islanders cap situation here. You see Josh Bailey right in there, $3.3 million. By the way, it's a little bit he's a $2 million player. You see Brock Nelson just underneath him. Certainly a little bit more of a valuable asset, Brock Nelson, and he can play the middle. I think that Josh Bailey's career, although Not really living up to the hype as what once was thought when he was a junior player. Certainly is not a bad hockey player. While I think that makes sense, you're thinking like, Ann, why are you thinking an overpaid player is going to make sense for the Montreal Canadiens? Well, they need somebody who can move the puck. They need somebody who can dish. And if you want somebody to set up Alex Galchenyuk, if you want somebody to set up Max Pacioretty, if you want somebody to get Brendan Gallagher going, Thomas Plekanec going, maybe Bailey's an option for you. Now, do I really believe in that? Not really. You got enough struggling forwards up there with Plekanec and Gallagher. You don't need to bring on another forward in Josh Bailey, but I'm trying to make sense of why Marc Bergevin is showing up at Islander games. It doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. Islanders are thin at the blue line, I believe, ever since they ever since they traded Travis Hamonic. Boychuk, Leddy are their solid two. You have Calvin DeHaan underneath that. Thomas Hickey gets minutes, and then there seems to be this little bit of a rotation where Adam Pelech, Ryan Pulock, Scott Mayfield, and Dennis Seidenberg seem to be rotating in and out of the last spot there, or last few spots. Seidenberg, I don't think looked good in his first game. He's not really a puck-moving defenseman, so there could be some interest there, but that really doesn't all make that. I'm trying to make sense of why Marc Bergevin is showing up at Islander games, and I can't really do it for you. It doesn't really make any sense. Calvin DeHaan is the only thing I can come up with. I mean, I don't know what he expects to see there with the Islanders that he can't see somewhere else. I'm dumbfounded by this. If you ask me, Marc Bergevin should have his rear end parked in Las Vegas, taking in the Golden Knights. The only problem there is he would not be the only one. It's the plentiful, defensively rich Golden Knights that I think is going to cause a little bit of an issue. Now, Matt Niskanen has gone down with an injury for the Caps. Andre Sekera has gone down for the Edmonton Oilers. And I believe it was Bob McKenzie, I want to make sure I get this right, who stated that a lot of people are going to be in on Vegas. I'm sorry, it was Pierre LeBrun. So Pierre LeBrun believes the Caps are looking around for blue line help since Niskanen went down with an upper body injury. He was placed on long-term reserve. The Golden Knights, he pointed out, still carrying 10 defensemen. That's the thing. Like, anytime a defenseman gets hurt, the Golden Knights are going to be mentioned. And rightfully so. I mean, they have a ridiculous lineup of defensemen. They are so deep on defense. It's pretty ridiculous. I mean, they got a lot of them. Take a look at this, Derek Engelland, who I don't believe is going anywhere. You have Jason Garrison, Brad Hunt, Braden McNabb, John Merrill, Colin Miller, Griffin Reinhart, Lucas Pisa, Nate Schmidt, and Clayton Stoner, who himself is on long-term reserve. Now, so take Clayton out of the mix. I think Nate Schmidt has really come in and done a tremendous job. I think he's on the untouchables list. Obviously, Derek Engelland is on the untouchables list. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised to see Engelland named captain at some point in this season for the Vegas Golden Knights. If you don't know, he makes Vegas his home. He met his wife in Vegas. They married. That's their off-season home. So he's playing at home. Very important. When the opening night came for the Vegas Golden Knights and came time for somebody to speak up for the team, it was Derek Engelland who took the microphone and had a lot of nice comments to say. So he is super important to the Vegas Golden Knights. I wouldn't be surprised if they slap a C on him at some point in the near future. So Engelland, I'd say, is unavoidable. He's not going anywhere. I would say that Nate Schmidt has become an untouchable. And I would say that's about it on this blue line. I think you can get anybody else away from the Vegas Golden Knights if you have the right package to offer. And specifically, I want to just point out 4 defensemen here. John Merrill, who has come in and out of the lineup, is definitely a possibility. Guy can move the puck. Not outstanding, but when you're as desperate as Montreal might be, he's a possibility. Brad Hunt on the younger end of things, you know, he hasn't had a ton of time to play. He is going to be a possibility for the Vegas Golden Knights if they want to make a move with Montreal. I think Colin Miller is here to stay in Vegas, but if you got the right price, you could probably manage to pull him off. And I think that Jason Garrison is also a possibility, but one of the least likely possibilities, as he is pretty good, and Vegas is going to want to hold on to him, especially if they're in the mix. Now, this all comes, as every rumor does, with a grain of salt, because if Vegas is in the mix and they don't want to give up any of these guys, well, then you're only going to have a shot at a Griffin Reinhart or a John Merrill, you know, one of the guys who's not in the lineup. But if Vegas starts to fade out of it and they want to grab assets and Montreal has something good to offer, then maybe you do bring in a Jason Garrison, who not as fast as, say, a Colin Miller or a John Merrill, but the guy's got a hell of a blast from the point, and the guy knows how to move the puck out of his end. And wouldn't it be nice to have a 1-2 punch of Shea Weber and Jason Garrison in there? Now, again, I believe that Garrison's contract is up at the end of this season. I'll again check that just as we're rolling along here from capfriendly.com. We'll take a look at the Vegas Golden Knights situation here for you. Bring it up on the screen if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Let's go over to the defenseman. And yeah, Garrison's 4.6 at the end of the year is up. And again, the fact that Montreal has $6 million or so worth of space is a really good thing in this instance. Now, you might be thinking, well, what else does Montreal have to offer to other teams? Great question. And the answer to that is not a lot. Frankly, not a whole hell of a lot. The one thing that Montreal does have, and if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, you'll see here, is 2 number 2 picks. They have theirs, and they have the Chicago Blackhawks. I think they have a conditional pick that might move up a little bit. They do from Tampa Bay, but they don't say where that moves up to. I thought they had possibly a 3rd number 2 in this year. But either way, they have a 2nd number 2, so that means that they have the flexibility to move that if they would like. They also have Alex Galchenyuk under contract for 2 more seasons past this one at 4.9. He's got to pick up his game a little bit if he wants to be appetizing on the trade market. But then again, if he picks up his game, wouldn't Montreal like to keep him? Sure, certainly that makes sense. But he could just be a change of scene sort of a situation where, you know, players just need a change of scenery in order to get going a little bit again. They don't have a lot to offer, Montreal. They really don't. But maybe a 2nd round pick is good enough, especially if you're going to be dealing with somebody like the Vegas Golden Knights. Outside of the Vegas Golden Knights, you have I believe, the 2nd most attractive defensive core, and that is the Nashville Predators. Now, I bring them up because there's been persistent rumors that the Preds and the Colorado Avalanche are talking. To me, this makes the most possible sense. While Dreger was on with TSN 690 in Montreal, he was also discussing this possibility, and he alluded to the fact that the Avalanche have heavily scouted the Preds, and that the fact that Duchene, we know, still needs a home would make a whole hell of a lot of sense for the Nashville Predators. I think that this really is where he is going to wind up. By the way, according to Habs eyesontheprize.com, take that at what you will, they say that the Caps 2nd round pick this year also belongs to Montreal. I'll have to double check on that and get back to you there. But back to Nashville and the Colorado Avalanche making a move. You look at Nashville's defense core, and even though Ryan Ellis has gone down, and from what I understand, might be a little bit of a longer-term deal, and Yannick Weber is on the injured reserve list right now, when those two guys come back on their D pairings, they still have PK Subban, they still have Alexei Emelin, they have Roman Josi, who is their captain. Matthias Ekholm was a solid defenseman. Matt Irwin, good young prospect. So is Anthony Bitetto. He's a Long Island guy. Familiar with him. He's learning the game right now and getting in on the NHL level. The defense for the Nashville Predators is super important in that they might make the most sense for the Colorado Avalanche. Now, all the rumors we hear, we know that a couple things. A, Joe Sakic might be a little crazy in what he's asking for, but B, that he wants a defenseman. He's been obsessed with the defenseman. That's where he wants to go. And if he wants to go D, his two choices to me right now, obviously, are the Vegas Golden Knights and the Nashville Predators. And I think the Predators are going to be more of a better fit for them because they need a Matt Duchene. I mean, who doesn't? Let's not forget he got selected just after John Tavares in the draft. So if we're going to obsess about John Tavares, you got to obsess just as much about good old Matt Duchene. He's got to be included in the mix on that. You look at their forward combinations, and they need a center. You got Forsberg, you got Johansson, you got Arvidsson, great top line. Scotty Hartnell, Kevin Fiala, Craig Smith, falls off a little bit. Sissons was great in the playoffs. Jankrook, Aberg, Solomaki, Austin Watson, and Cody McLeod. I love Austin Watson, by the way. I like these big fourth line guys. In case you didn't pick up on that, if you're listening to the Hockey Talk Show, the last couple episodes, I like the big guys on the back end. I take interest in the bottom six forwards. I think they're super important when you're building a team. I shouted out Andrew Shaw in Montreal. Talked a lot about him in the last episode. I think they're important. I think they're important when you're building a team, especially if you can get a big guy who, can also score too. If you missed the last episode, we'll throw links up on the YouTube and the Facebook. But again, just subscribe to our pages so you don't miss any of this. Subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher, whichever your preferred podcatcher is. We're also on the TuneIn Radio app. You can follow us along there and get every single episode. And again, leave comments and rate the show if you can. That's super important in the podcast world to make this thing go around, to keep supporting and keep growing the Hockey Talk Show. We just started it this season. We want to grow it, make it a big thing. We're being very patient on that. But any of your help is certainly appreciated. So back to Nashville. I liken this to the Johansson deal. Ryan Johansson being traded from Columbus, and it wasn't easy for the Columbus Blue Jackets. I'm sorry, it wasn't easy for the Nashville Predators to go ahead and trade their defense because Poile loves defensemen, and he had a good one in Seth Jones, who he sent over to Columbus. But you got to realize at some point, hey, we need some offense to win. Coming off of last year's Stanley Cup Finals team, you lost Mike Fisher, who's not a huge offensive production guy, but important to your forward core. And you also lost, a big scorer in James Neal. At some point, Nashville and David Poile are going to come to the realization they have to replace that. Matt Duchene is the best possibility they have, and they also have the best offer in return, which is defenseman. Now, Sakic also wants a first-round pick, and Sakic also wants a young prospect. I don't know if Poile is going to be willing to, part with that. I wouldn't think so, but you have to see how the season shakes out. Super important to note this as well. We're 5, 6, 7 games into the year. I just want to make this point, make sure it's out there. I don't foresee any trades happening before the 20-game mark. 20 games, American Thanksgiving, that seems to be the line of, okay, what do I have here and what adjustments do I need to make? So I think all these managers, who are all extremely patient, by the way, are planting the seeds, kicking the tires, any other cliche you can come up with to figure out what they're going to do. But I think you're going to see a mini little trade flurry here. I think you're going to see a little mini trade Theo flurry here. That was awful. I wish we could edit that out. But anyway, you're going to see a little trade flurry coming up here in the next little while, right as that 20-game mark comes about. Because once teams really know, then they're going to start making moves. By the way, if the Montreal Canadiens continue to lose, I think that'll be accelerated for them. I think you'll see panic set in on Marc Bergevin if, hockey God forbid, they go to like 1-8. If they get to 10 losses quick, if they're 2-10 or 3-10, 2-9, something like that, I think you're going to see the pressure ramp up on him big time. Big time. Because I think the Montreal Canadiens have what it takes. Obviously, they have Carey Price. They got what they can get by. But if they don't gain a sense of confidence at some point, and Galchenyuk continues to rot on the fourth line, I think you might see them make a move. I think you might see them make a move a little bit quicker than the 20-game mark. That's the only way I think we see a trade prior to the 20-game mark. Other than that, I think we'll stick in that 20-game area. So just to recap the trade rumor show here, don't know what Marc Bergevin is doing with the New York Islanders. Doesn't seem to make a lot of sense outside of Calvin DeHaan. And again, if he's looking for that type of a player, he must obviously be obsessed with DeHaan, because you can certainly get some pretty solid defensemen from Vegas who, let's be honest, they're going to give some of these guys away, Now, Vegas, they're not going to be stupid. They're definitely going to wait their time. George McPhee is a great general manager. He knows how to build a team. He knew he was going to pull in some more defensemen. He knew he was going to have some trade assets to continue to build for the future. So he's going to hold on to these guys as long as he possibly can. And it's the right move, because if somebody gets hurt, Niskanen, Sekera, Edmonton, Washington, they may be a little bit more desperate now than they were prior to this. If a couple more guys go down, now suddenly you're getting calls from Edmonton, Washington, and maybe, then 2 or 3 other teams start calling you. Now you get a bidding war. Now you can pick up some extra draft picks. Now you start picking up some 4ths, some 5ths, some 6ths, maybe a 3rd if you can, as you try and get teams to up their offer. So McPhee is going to wait. He sure is. But if you think that the Vegas Golden Knights are going to finish the season with 10 defensemen, you're crazy. They're not. They're going to make some moves. So I think McPhee is going to be an important part of all of this. But I think that if Bergevin is smart, he would really spend his time there. Take a look at Colin Miller. Take a look at Brad Hunt. Does he have what it takes to play in the National Hockey League and be a mainstay defenseman? He certainly has the offensive skill down in the minors. He has a lot of potential upside. Maybe he just needs that spot to come fit in and make it all happen. Jason Garrison, if you want to pay a little bit more and get a more established guy, only for this year, that might make more sense for Montreal, so they're not really tied up in anybody long term. Then they can regroup in the offseason and see what they have. So, again, to recap, I'm not sure what Bergevin is doing. He might be wasting his time. And I think that David Poile shouldn't wait too long for Matt Duchene, because Lord knows that Joe Sakic can outwait all of us. I think he's got to get his offense moving. He's got to make that happen. Not to say that, Nashville is off to a rough start. In fact, let me take a look here and see where Nashville is in the standings. I don't think they're doing that bad. Yeah, they're 3-2-1. So they're in the top wild card spot in the West, middle of the pack. That's where they're going to be. That's where they were last year, and they went all the way to the Cup final. But I think if you think that you're going to continue to embark on your success, get back to a Cup final without adding a big-time goal scorer like a Duchene, I don't foresee that happening for Nashville. I really don't. I think you can afford, with your defensive core, to deal one of those guys, even though it may pain you. You may be able to deal one of those guys and make something happen there. Of course, this all depends on Ryan Ellis and whether or not he can get back in the lineup. Even if he couldn't, Call me nuts. You still got a crazy good top four with Ekholm, Yossi, Emelin, and Subban. You don't need to overkill it. Those four guys make the six defensemen of Nashville a lot better than most of the other teams in the National Hockey League. There's plenty of teams that have question marks in their 5 and 6 pairing. Their 5 and 6 D-man, their third pairing. Plenty of teams have question marks in that area. It would not kill the Nashville Predators whatsoever to lighten the strength of their defensive core. And again, especially because look who you got backstopping you all the way, the one and only Pekka Rinne. What else do you have to worry about? Get the offense you need to make it happen. If you're Nashville, you're going to be facing the Penguins. If you get out of the West, you're going to be facing Columbus possibly or Washington. And, you're going to have some trouble even just getting out of the West with, some high-powered offensive teams like Chicago or Edmonton if they get their act together, which I think they will. I really think they will. So that's your trade rumor roundup. I like the trade rumor shows. I think we're going to try and make this a steady thing. We'll definitely be talking about them and discussing trade rumors in all shows. But I like the idea of maybe dedicating one show or one quick hit segment into just trade rumors so you guys get a feel of what's going on. There's a couple of other little things here, a couple of other little rumblings that have been going around. But we really hit all the big ones in the last couple of days here. Talked about Edmonton wanting to maybe do something. We didn't spend much time on Andreas Athanasiou's contract status. I don't know what's going on there. Darren Ferris, his agent, should be fired. Clearly, he had his other client, Josh Anderson, holding out for Columbus. They got a deal done before the year. Athanasiou has no rights here. He belongs to Detroit. If Athanasiou spends the year somewhere else, he still comes back in the same exact. It's not like, a year passed and now he can go free agent sign with some. No, he's right in the same position that he always is. This is the way the league was built. Young players don't really have the rights. You need to get to a certain age, I believe 26, 27 for the most part, and have a certain number of years under your belt before you can become an unrestricted free agent. It's favorable to the team so that they can keep the young talent, but it also does present you with exciting free agents a la John Tavares. Evander Kane is another possibility that people are hearing rumblings. He's off to a halfway decent start. I would imagine that he's going to have a career year here, him being in a contract year. But if you're another team, I would just be very wary of Evander Kane. He's very hit or miss. Didn't work out in Winnipeg. I don't know how much he's really helping in Buffalo. They're not exactly winning a ton of games over there in Buffalo. And he's playing with Jack Eichel or Sam Reinhart or Ryan O'Reilly. You look at underachieving teams, and I pick on Montreal and Rangers a lot. You got to look at the Buffalo Sabres as well. The only difference here is I didn't think they were going to be that good from the get-go, and neither does anybody else. Whereas the Rangers in Montreal, everybody gave them a whole lot of credit. So maybe that's why we spent more time there. But you look at the top six for the Buffalo Sabres. Here's six guys that should be performing a whole hell of a lot better. A whole hell of a lot better. And you got Matty Molson here sitting on a fourth line where he was a Tavares winger for a longest time. He was top line winger for the New York Islanders. You may be thinking to yourself, well, what the hell happened? Well, I think Matty Molson's a really talented player, but I think whenever you're playing with a John Tavares, your numbers are going to be pumped up. Your numbers are going to be bloated just a little bit. And then you get back here and you start playing with Gergensons and Jordan Nolan, and suddenly there's not so much open ice because John Tavares ain't out there with you, But Okposo, and he's the same kind of. I think Buffalo kind of bought a couple of players here from the Islanders, and Okposo and Molson, that their stats were bloated by John Tavares, by playing with John Tavares. But still, Sam Reinhart's a great young player with a lot of potential and upside. Ryan O'Reilly, everybody brings up the contract, but he's still a good player. Jack Eichel just got the $80 million deal. He's worth it. He's the kind of guy you want to build your team around. Jason Palmerville, certainly serviceable as a top 6 forward. Not going to be around forever, but certainly will get you past this year. But Evander Kane, you know, Kyle Okposo, Matt Molson, you know, where are these guys? You know, they got to turn it up for Buffalo if they want to be better. Buffalo's got a decent defense. Ristolainen and Scandella. I like Josh Georges in there. And their goaltending is a bit of a question with Robin Lehner. But we'll see. He's not terrible. He's good. Chad Johnson's certainly one of the best backups in the league. We got Zach Bogosian, who's hurt right now. A lot to look at here with the Buffalo Sabres moving forward. But, you know, you're starting to hear those like rumblings, and there's going to be Evander Kane rumblings. He's in a career year. If Buffalo doesn't want to re-sign him, he could be available towards the deadline, maybe even earlier. Again, I'll point out Nashville, who can use some scoring potential. And in a situation where you want to pick up a guy and maybe get lucky with Evander Kane and ride his hot hand if he has a great year, but not lock into anything long term where you're stuck with somebody that you don't necessarily really like all that much. What's Evander Kane making here? According to capfriendly.com, great website. Love those guys. Kaner comes in at $5.25 million. So he's making a lot. And he is a free agent towards the end of the season. By the way, I thought Jordan Nolan was a good pickup for the Buffalo Sabres early on in the year here. All right, that's your trade rumor roundup on the Hockey Talk Show. Quick hit. Hope you enjoyed it. Remember to spread the word on social media. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Hockey Talk Show. On all 3 of those, at Hockey Talk Show. You can also search YouTube. Hockey Talk Show will come right up. Subscribe on YouTube. Hit that bell to make sure you get notifications for when we go live. Same deal on Facebook. We'll be streaming the video live there as well. And, of course, you could watch the shows even if you can't see them live. They'll be available on the Facebook stream as well as YouTube. On Facebook, you don't just like the page, but you got to also click that follow button and make sure you're setting your notifications to be notified for all. That's a super, super important detail for Facebook. A lot of people don't know that. You don't want to miss out on the live shows when we open up the phones and give you a chance to call in and chat with us here on the Hockey Talk Show. If you're listening to this on podcast, super blown away by how many people have picked up the podcast already, whether it's on Stitcher, iTunes, the TuneIn Radio app, or Podbean. Make sure you're rating the podcast. Even if you give us a 3 or a 2 or whatever it is, we're cool with that. Just rate it. Leave a review if you can, even if it's just a couple of lines. That's how you move up the podcast world. Any help with growing the Hockey Talk Show is certainly appreciated. We got a lot of fun stuff planned for this coming season, actually. We'll be announcing those as we go along. For now, I'm your old pal, Ant, and I'll see you around.